Amir Tahvonen made qualitative research as part of his master's thesis on urban foraging in Southern Finland, and especially of wild plants. And this is within Aalto University's Creative Sustainability Program. On this video you will hear his presentation of the findings and conclusions and a discussion at the end of this video.
Into the findings and the futures. So the interview data then, it suggested that foraging in Finland, urban foraging in Finland, it provides a really kind of like a wide array of material and non-material things for the urban foragers, from food to medicine and well-being effects, and even some forms of self-sufficiency. And the expert, they mentioned well-being effects of being in nature really often, and among nutritional health benefits. And they also talked about foraging being a way of connecting to ancient, I think maybe even like humanness, but also to the local culture. And yeah, the feeling of being in nature was described by many people as being like a full body experience, which enhances then the well-being of the person who forages. And the kind of like the freeness and the self-sufficiency aspects were mentioned, that there's a real interest in some forms of kind of self-sufficiency, where foraging seemed to bring like a feeling of agency and preparedness for the people who know how to forage. That one of the interviews said that then you can more actively operate when you can pick them yourself and you don't have to buy everything ready. So there was an idea of not being so reliant on something that you need to purchase by money. And for the sustainability angles, the experts I interviewed, they reported many different ways to forage in sustainable ways so that the plants can renew themselves, like favoring really ample and common species, avoiding really rare species. And what was really kind of highlighted, and which I've illustrated here in the slide, is that I think almost all of the experts I talked to, they mentioned the symbiosis of orpines, which are Isomaxaroho, and then these Apollo butterflies, which are endangered butterflies. The butterfly larvae, they eat this plant as their only food source, which is something that some butterflies do, that they only eat a specific plant, and then if you don't have that or enough of that, then it can lead to different kinds of problems. So this was a really kind of interesting, this was a very commonly known species relation, that there's an understanding beyond only the plant that people do. Foraging experts, of course, they do know about these links of ecosystems, and then they know how to respond to those in their practice. And what was interesting was another sustainability angle, was that the experts brought up this process where it is kind of like a non-distinguished background of different kinds of plants that becomes known, and then it might become appreciated as well. So then with this appreciation, when you notice that, okay, this isn't just a background, that there are actual plants, there are actual species, these might be important for me, these might be tasty for me, there might also come this idea that you want to protect this as well. And one of the experts I interviewed, they said that after a few hours, people are like, now I don't know where I can step at all, that they don't want to spoil this, that you kind of have this different awareness of how you are acting in an environment when it becomes known to you. And then there was an really interesting thing that not all of the experts, but some people described this like a shaken or a ripple effect, where foraging could lead to other lifestyle changes, that you might, through foraging, want to kind of expand your whole lifestyle to be more environmentally friendly, which was a very lovely thing. But this is, of course, still a really speculative thing as well. One expert described that how seeing a pear tree in the city was like opening another dimension to the people attending the foraging workshop. And this kind of like a shaken or a boundary breaking phenomenon was reported in the academic literature as well. But yeah, I do note that the sustainability effects of is does this happen to people? How often does this happen to people? And does it then lead to these lifestyle changes? Then I would say that it's still quite speculative, but it's very interesting. So the kind of future dreams of foraging cities, I collaged them together from the expert interviews into these three loosely formed images. And I think that overall the dreams were pretty kind of possible. Like people dreamed of having meadows with signage, diverse areas where foraging would be possible, foraging more included into everyday life of people. And I I then kind of collaged the different dream descriptions into three themes, and then I illustrated them with visual collage. And well, coming back to the idea that I think these dreams that people describe that they were kind of possible, then of course maybe then the next questions are then like what are then the barriers to these dreams kind of becoming a reality? Of course. One dream which I titled Integrating and Leaving Room was a city where foraging would be both more integrated and kind of also allowed to emerge on its own. So foraging would be made possible in new locations by both allowing it there and also removing some barriers like pesticide use, which would, um, hinder people from foraging from a park, for example. And there might be movable green elements, temporary foraging sites, different kinds of practical ways of making foraging possible. And then another kind of like a dream theme, it had a really kind of like a social angle that like a wish for a more communal and a social urban life where foraging would be woven into different stages of life, and foraging would be taught in schools. There might be annual gooseberry carnival, like a festival in the city, smaller building blocks for neighbors to kind of swap recipes. So an idea that foraging might change then how we people interact with each other as well as how we might interact with the plants. And then finally, one of the dream themes that I described in my work was a dream of like increased support from the city and policy and market levels to make foraging an established and an official thing, also on a commercial kind of like a wider scale. And this had a maybe like a little bit more of a market focused idea that foraging might need to be included in the markets in order to grow or become something more than it is today. And of course, it's a good thing to know that these images, they're my interpretation. I've based them on the interviews, but I'm also kind of collaged them together. And each expert had their own view and their own kind of response to this. Even though I found similarities through their different dreams and their descriptions of those. But I think that overall, these dreams they illustrate this really, really lovely view of an urban environment with fruit trees and berries and flowers, plants growing around the city. And here's a picture of this lovely wild horseradish in bloom, which I don't get to bloom in my garden, but it just grows very beautifully on a roadside there. And as one expert said, that these are plants of love, and they're not weeds. They're plants of plenty, and they cannot be despised.
I was really taken by your dreaming activity, like because I have been dreaming of many things in about 30 years of my activity with foraging, teaching it, and actually many of the dreams have been realized. So keep on dreaming.
This is a really lovely thing to hear. Definitely.
Nothing will come out. And like I make many notions of the practical side and also asking if it came out. But like I think in this urban and city foraging, a major question is what is the attitude of the municipalities to it? Because they can make problems to the foragers or help them. Like which way are you going? And I think there's going to be a day when municipalities are ranked with many features like what is the taxation and everything, but this could be one day like one of the features that people ask, how do you take into consideration my willingness to do urban foraging, plants and mushrooms and berries, for instance, by providing, like, you have these trekking grounds, like where can I go for a walk or skiing? That's municipal services. Why not to have a map where you give out the best places where you can safely forage, and even say that you can find these plants there. Like, why not? This would be basic.
Yeah, it would be lovely. Very doable.
Very doable. And also I have had two municipalities, Lahti and Jyväskylä. We tested this idea that we make a Horta Park, which is a designated area with, let's say, 10, 12 best plants, and we have poles there with QR codes, and under that it's arranged that mainly just that plant which is presented by the QR code, it's there near to the pole. So you can safely study it there and feel safe to go into the forest to do the foraging, because this is normally what people want to have, the safe feeling with these plants, that they don't mix it with something else. But it's best with teaching, and also like this, like you had somewhere mentioned that we should feel the foraging with many senses, and this is exactly so, especially to, like at the kindergarten age, I've learned that before the age of 6, they will be fascinated by what the nature can offer, and they want to have a connection to the nature. But after that, and going to the school, they will lose this, even the want to have a connection to the nature, because there's so much other things coming to their head, like duties of learning and warnings of the dangers of the forest and meadows. Like there are ticks and bacteria and dirt and snakes and whatnot. So they change their mindset to a very bad direction, to lose this connection. Like you mentioned that many of you people who you interviewed, that it's so great that this foraging hobby takes me to nature, and the nature helps me with stress lowering and all this. Like everybody says this who is addicted to foraging. It's like a side effect, but it's very important, that because the stress is one of our biggest problems as a root cause for many illnesses and autoimmune conditions. So just having foraging as a hobby, even if you didn't eat them, would be healthy. Do you agree?
Yes, definitely.
And like you having this passion to do this thesis on this theme, because you do it yourself. So I'm interested if you have like further ideas, like are you connected to any projects or groups of people who might be going on dreaming and actually doing some stuff? And I loved your illustrations, and I also love this sustainability idea, because I have a long history of teaching these Horta guides, Hortaohjaaja, and this was one of the main issues, that respect the nature, do it sustainable way, and take 10 to 20% of one area. The plant can renew itself and it's not disappearing, and be grateful. Like in the old tradition, you ask the permission to go and get fruits of the forest, and then thank you with your full basket of mushrooms. And this is a good tradition that used to be in Finland. We should revive it, I think. And these young people, I have been working with kindergartens to create a method like where they can learn to sense the nature, not only by seeing plants, but of course smelling them and seeing that this green mass has completely different smells. Like if you take yarrow or if you take ground elder or something which is like a celery type or carrot-like, and it's spicy, the yarrow, so there are completely different smells. And also, if you feel them, like this plantago is like skin, and it helps the skin, so these kids can realize that it's really something that you can go with all your senses to the nature, to hear the nature. What are the sounds there? Because this is very soothing to the mind, and if you learn it as a kindergarten age, it's very good to have it for the rest of your life, because that this connection to nature will remain. But if you don't get it young, because we have experts in our team, especially in Poland, to do this forest bathing to schools.
I do remember that one of my Thesis creative sustainability students from one student from my school, I think she researched different kinds of kindergarten yards or play areas, and I think she had a very strong notion that the kind of like non-structured yards are in many different ways much better than the kind of like concrete or pre-designed kindergarten yards. So that I think there's like a really good kind of like a tangent for having places where you can also forage, or like it's that it might be beneficial in many different ways to have spaces which are not kind of structured, that okay, now you have a sandbox here, now you do the sand here, that's so you have a much more kind of like non-designed areas by design, and that might be helpful in many different ways. And of course, getting dirt, the good kind of dirt that we have outside when we dig around, and we are exposed to different kinds of microbes and different kinds of species, and that's a really beneficial thing, of course, for our bodies, because we're not singular beings. We're kind of like combinations of many different things. So we need to have other species and other things. Yeah.
More and more people are living in cities. Like in the future, it's going to be like 70% of the human population is in the cities. So they should have a connection to nature, even if they are living in the cities. So I think this theme is vital for people to have this connection, that they have a hobby which takes them regularly to the nature, and they get a respect for the nature, that it's not weeds, as you said, that these are something that should be cherished. And it's like the most original food we have. It's untampered and developed or GMO, anything done to it. So like just to realize how valuable it is